Hey art nerds, it did not take long for me to want to put that mini watercolor sketchbook that I kind of remade to use. And it's basically December. I'm actually recording this the Sunday after Thanksgiving, so it's right after Thanksgiving. Technically, I'm in my I can record Christmas content zone. So today I want to put this teeny tiny little sketchbook to the field test. I want to paint a holiday wreath. So the first page on this super micro watercolor sketchbook is Baohang watercolor paper. And I am using a micro mini palette that I made here on the channel a while back. I'll put a link to that video as well as the video where I make this watercolor sketchbook down in the description below in case you'd like to make your own. I've seen these around on Instagram. I do not think the one I have here, which I got from Zulily, is what other artists are using. If you guys know what other artists are using for their micro mini paintings, please tell me down in the comments because I would like something that works a little bit better than this. It's not awful, but it's not ideal either. Now, since we're doing mini painting and I do a comic about tiny people, 7-inch Kara, which you can read for free at 7inchkara.com. I wanted to go all out mini, and I was kind of playing around with filming it in a way that makes it look more miniature. So we have a tiny, tiny little slice of tree. We have a super duper tiny little glass jar. We've got our mini watercolor palette filled with Magello paints. And of course, we have our miniature watercolor sketchbook for today. The only thing not miniature is the brushes. I'm using full-size brushes, although I gotta admit, I've already been on Amazon and I'm already looking at mini brushes. I know some people do custom mini brushes, and those are gorgeous, but I just don't think I would actually use them all that much. So I'm either going to buy a set of miniature brushes, which I really don't want to do, or I may end up cutting down some of my least favorite watercolor brushes to use for mini paintings like this one. There's a YouTube channel here where they do, and I'll link it in the description below. I used to watch it all the time, and it's basically a miniature kitchen, and they use tea lights to help cook things, and they do everything in miniature, and I love that. And it would be really fun and cute to do some videos in a similar scale with like watercolor. So here on the channel, I promise this is not going to become the teeny tiny painting channel, but I will probably share that kind of content over on my Instagram if you guys are curious about that. So one of the problems I had with micro painting, and I think this is something that's going to take getting used to, is water control and also paint control. Because you're painting so small and Magello paints are so concentrated, a little bit really does go a long way. Also, these brushes are just kind of awful. The flat is fine, but that round is a really beaten, chewed up round, and it's just, I gotta find something better than that. So if you're interested in the paper that I'm using in this teeny tiny watercolor sketchbook, I am using a mix of Baohang and Shizan watercolor paper, and that was after testing a few papers. So now I'm sprinkling in some salt crystals because I was really hoping to get like a snowflake sort of thing going. Normally when I sprinkle kosher salt on a watercolor painting, I get that kind of effect. Didn't happen so much with this. I don't know if it's the super small size or the color I used or what. I know it's not the paper because I have done this technique on this paper before, but it didn't quite give me what I was looking for. Once it dried, I used a large mop brush just to remove the salt crystals so I could continue my watercolor painting. Another challenge with working this small is, and I kid you not, I had to bring my camera in really close, and that meant my brushes were constantly hitting my camera stand. So I feel like if you're not recording this, or if you can find a different way to record something like this, it's going to go a lot better for you. Also, working with smaller brushes, if you can get used to them, probably a lot better as well. So now we're going to talk about paint control. Since we're working so small, and I am working with synthetics, which can sometimes be screwy. Maybe the trick is to work with natural fibers for this one. It was such a tiny amount of paint, I couldn't even get it to stick to the palette to mix what, and you see it flow back into itself. I couldn't even get it to stick to the palette long enough for me to mix up a sizable amount of paint. And this is not a how-to miniature painting video. I've done a few mini painting videos here on the channel, mostly for fun, since like I said, I do a comic about tiny people, and I thought that would be kind of a fun way to celebrate the world that my comic is set in. But I generally don't work this small. I've mentioned in some of my videos I tend to work small because I am a comic artist, and when you're subdividing an 11 by 14 watercolor sheet of paper into 6 panels, you're definitely working on some smaller illustrations there, but this is a lot smaller than I'm used to. I actually don't mind drawing this small. My thumbnails are often at about this size, but painting this small is a little bit of a challenge. Now, it's not something I'm totally not used to whatsoever, since in Kara's dollhouse, the house where she lives, they've decorated the walls with stamps, and I gotta paint those stamps. So I'm not totally new to it, but I'm certainly not an experienced miniature painter. But it would be a lot of fun to play around with this some more and to do it some more. It's very quick. It's very compact. I actually didn't time-lapse this video at all because it is such a quick process. Now, another thing that I want to play around with this is the sounds I was getting for this video were like giving me the ASMR response, like screwing on the cap lid and painting on the paper were giving me the ASMR tingles. However, I have a very, very, very loud dehumidifier, and I have a very loud AC unit, and my computer whines. So at some point, I would love to try and capture some clean audio of this sort of process, and I'd like to try to maybe do that outside, and that way we get some of the ambient outside noises. Of course, my neighbors mow their lawn like every day. It seems like anytime I go outside to record like a vlog, they always decide, oh, we're gonna let the dogs out and mow the lawn. So I gotta be strategic about when I do that. You would think the middle of the day on like a Monday would not be the time to mow the lawn, but that seems to be the best time of all. So blocking in the basic details on this miniature watercolor paper was super quick. And I have a lot of wet into wet bleeds, which I'm not really concerned about. I mean, part of the joy of painting something so tiny can be abstraction and kind of boiling everything down to its most minimal form, and also just kind of letting go and not caring so much about everything being super clean. Of course, I did want to add some more details. I wanted to practice and play around with this art form a bit more, so I allowed it to dry, and then I'm going in and I'm adding in just some fur needle details here and there. And this is like a size 0 synthetic round, and that seems like it's a pretty good size for this. It's just that this round has been through the ringer. It has been through heck and back. It's got a lot of problems, and you'll see it start to splay by the end of the video. So one of the things I want to do in this tiny okay, so first of all, the pages are held in with elastic. And when I was making this book, reassembling this book, because I basically gutted the paper that came in it, and then I tried to find watercolor paper that it worked at least moderately well on both sides. You're going to get about 8 pages max in this thing since watercolor paper is so thick, and I even scored it to make it fold easier. But just the nature of 140-pound cotton rag watercolor paper is it's kind of thick. So I only am able to get 8 sheets of watercolor paper in this, which is good and bad. You can swap it out really easily. If you wanted to, you could replace your favorites later on, although I guess that would require a little cutting since these are basically attached in signatures of 4. So 4 paintings if you so desire to paint back and front. And like I said, I tested watercolor papers for a couple of different properties, which I talk about in the making of video, but being able to paint on the back of the paper at least decently well, it doesn't have to be as good as the front, but at least passably well on the back was really important since we do get such a limited number. And one of the things I wanted to kind of play around with in this is doing like miniature landscapes. I do backgrounds in my comics and I do backgrounds in a lot of my illustrations, but I don't really think about landscapes. And I think maybe really simplifying and just capturing the most basic details could be really good for me. So 4x6, that's way too big. Let's do, this is like 1.5 inches by 2 inches, something like that. And that's on the spread. So it is super duper tiny. So I don't intend to paint a bunch of Christmas stuff in general. Since it is December, I might do a bunch of Christmas stuff in this thing just for fun, because I don't normally get super into doing a lot of seasonal stuff. I just tend to find Christmas very overwhelming. But since we've moved back to Louisiana, I don't have to factor in an 8-hour drive there and back, and I don't have to factor in not having internet access for 2 weeks. So that kind of frees up a lot of my December for actually doing December-y kind of things. So for all I know, maybe I'll fill this whole thing up with Christmassy sort of mini illustrations, and then I can just replace the pages in spring and fill them with landscapes and floral paintings. Who even knows? So when I am working this small, one of the key things I need to think about is letting it dry so I can get those details in. Because it is so small, if you do want to do details, it's important that they're sharp. And now that the base painting is dry, I'm going to go in and add a little bit of white gouache. It is the only thing that isn't miniature in this, but you know what? If I do this long enough, I might have those miniature brushes. I might have a miniature container of gouache. Who even knows? I'm such a sucker for miniatures, you guys. I used to collect raiment, and I would definitely go back to collecting raiment if I had anywhere to put it. And there's so many cute diorama kits, and like the idea of staging this in a tiny bedroom and then recording it and painting it. Oh no, we're gonna get so meta. I'm gonna end up making like a miniature camera rig and then trying to make it look like we're filming from the miniature camera rig. And whoo, that rabbit hole is deep. So we are just about done with our miniature painting. Putting a teeny tiny miniature paint puck in the bottom of my teeny tiny glass of water might also be helpful, because it was kind of challenging cleaning the pigments out of my brush in such a small amount of water on a very smooth surface. I'm used to scrubbing them against the paint puck, but this was a really fun little thing to do. I definitely can see myself doing more of these in the future, and I hope you guys will keep an eye on my Instagram, which is instagram.com/natosoup. If you like this kind of miniature stuff, I'd love to play with it more over there. I don't necessarily want to further clog up this channel with miniature painting. So if you guys enjoy miniatures, then cheer me on at instagram.com/natosoup. And also, there's lots of other artists who paint in miniature who are way better than I am, that if you're looking for inspiration, you should definitely check them out. So I had so much fun painting this. I look forward to doing another one when I have a little bit of free time. It being so tiny makes it easier to just kind of slip it in there into my life. I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me, and I hope this was inspiring for y'all. I'll link the video on how I made this, as well as some sources where you can get your own little metal sketchbook necklaces if that's something you're interested in. You could also do it with like a little leather bound sketchbook that has like the Hobonichi style elastic where you can replace your own paper. But I really enjoyed doing this, and I enjoyed hanging out with you guys, and I hope to see you guys again really soon. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope your December is safe and healthy and warm, and I hope it's filled with all of the good things and all of the people you love. So have a wonderful day and happy holidays, guys. Bye.